Tough questions, new insights, diverse perspectives. Welcome to Questions of the Day with Fanuel Muindi.
All right, welcome back to Questions of the Day. My name is Fanuel Muindi, your host. Now, if you did not know this, the National Science Foundation has something called the Broader Impact Statement that pretty much all grants submitted to the foundation need to have. And this is their word to say the Broader Impact Statement is a critical component of any research proposal submitted to the NSF. Broader Impact strengthen the relationship between science, community, and society. So today we're joined by Rockwell Anyoha, a graduate student at Harvard University in the Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology. And so, Rockwell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
So I want to get started right into it. And I'll actually share a quote something that you had put out a while ago, and it's on part of the Humans of HBI. You may recall this. And so in there's a quote I'm going to pull out, and you said, simply put, I'm convinced that animals are cool and do interesting stuff, and learning about the things they do and how and why they do them can be both fun and fruitful. Now, your work is partially funded by the NSF, National Science Foundation, and as you heard me talk about earlier, there is the thing called the Broader Impact Statement. And so I want to dig deep into these. And so your work has these broader impacts. In fact, you have 6 of them. And so Rockwell, just take us back to when you were putting this proposal together and the work. How did you think about these broader impacts as you were designing the work itself? And because this is something that, most people don't get that insight, especially those who are not writing these grants.
I really, really want people to understand just how much personality and how amazing these animals are. They go through the same problems that we do. And I just want people to sort of be able to gain that appreciation from when they're seeing animals and just realize, hey, they're trying to make it in the world just like we are. They get sick just like we do. And just having sort of that appreciation and awareness and for them and not take them for granted. And I think this can ultimately lead down towards the paths of things like animal conservation. And if you think of an animal in a much more personal way, you're much more likely to support policies that conserve animals and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's really my overall. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually that's great, because the first item in your broad impact is enhancing public awareness and education. And you've been talking about that. Can you tell us more about then what have you done towards that end, especially on the community side that you just talked about?
Yeah. So admittedly, I've done a couple things and I've learned a lot of things. The main medium through which I've actually been spreading this gospel is actually through an NSF program called Physics of Living Systems. So I'm supported by them, and through them, I've been able to partake in a foundation called Biobus. And so Biobus is essentially what it is it's a lab on wheels. And so we drive around a bus. We go to different elementary schools, middle schools, sometimes high schools, and sometimes we just park the bus in a random parking lot outside of a town hall. And we bring samples, we bring organisms, we bring, critters, animals, microscopes, scientific tools, and we just talk to people about, hey, this is this kind of organism, this is what we studied, this is what they do. And just seeing people engage with the animals very closely, you can see their eyes light up. I'm like, oh, this is, this might be a bug that I take for granted, but, we know that the bug is able to navigate to find food, and it's able to avoid predators, and it's able to respond to sound. And, and if you observe them long enough, you can actually see that they all have different personalities. And so that's been really rewarding, working with those kids through Biobus.
And I'm just thinking while you're talking, initiatives like Lab Exchange, I think you've been involved with at times, right? That can probably be a vehicle for that module you were just talking about now. But I want to go back to the beginning part where you mentioned the Biobus, because I happen to know Ben Rubin, who's the founder of Biobus, and I've met him a couple of times over in New York. And so tell us more about there. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I asked you, what did you learn from doing that, right? You're engaging the public. And I mean here, I guess these are young people that are coming to the buses mostly, right? Their parents are bringing them there. Rockwell, when you look back at those experiences, what did you learn from doing that work?
Well, I think the number one thing I learned is I sort of took for granted how easy it is to get people excited about science in general when you just show them. When you show them and when you talk to them, they just get excited organically. They ask questions organically. And sometimes they ask questions that I myself, haven't thought about. And then it makes me go, that is interesting. A lot of these kids are coming in with absolutely no background, absolutely no biases. They're just curious about what's going on. They might be interested in, this smells weird, or this moves weird, or, this is really squishy. And it makes you really think about things on a very broad sense. These are wonders of the world, and people can really get inspired by them quite easily and quite organically. And I think that's something that I took for granted until I started seeing all those eyes light up for what I considered to be a, fairly mundane day-to-day thing. It also lends to the fact that most kids at that age are not actually regularly exposed to this kind of thing. So that's something else that I take for granted, which is weird because, I wasn't exposed to that kind of thing when I was a kid. And it seems like I already forgot what a privilege it is to be around all this, all these, scientific tools and methods, working with them every day. You sort of take for granted that, this is not something that people interact with all the time. And
it's great to think deeper about that. And maybe we don't do enough of that, right? So it's a question mark to think about. And actually it leads me to my next question. With research or from the body of work, from the proposal, for example, the ultimate goal there is to publish it, right? In a scientific journal of some kind. When it comes to these broader impacts, what's your philosophy here? Do you publish these insights? For example, this taking things for granted. Do you publish this along with a paper, or where did they end up in particular? That's something that some of our
So that's a really good question. So mostly I've just been talking about this with my peers and through the people that I meet through Biobus. But I do think it would be very powerful to actually publish some of these insights and findings, some of these observations that I see in something like, Journal of Science Communication, writing about it, writing essays. I think that there is a lot to be said and a lot that can be transmitted much more efficiently if it's done formally. And so that's something that I'm actually hoping to do in the next coming months.
Oh, wow. Well, we welcome you back here to talk about that work when you do publish it. We always love to get authors and quiz them on the bodies of work that they're putting together. And you mentioned the Journal of Science Communication. We've had a couple authors actually come in that way as well. And so, we are scratching the surface here really about these broader impacts of yours, because you have another 5 in there: informing clinical practice and mental health interventions, addressing gender disparities, supporting early intervention strategies, fostering collaborative research, ethical and social implications. I mean, it is quite ambitious, Rockwell. Well, this was so insightful. In fact, we can sit here and take apart so many components of your work, but sadly, we are out of time for this segment. What that means is that we're going to have you back sooner versus later. I really appreciate you sharing the insights. And for those who are curious to learn more about the NSF broader impacts, click below. A couple links to Rockwell Anyoha's work are also in the description. Thank you so much, Rockwell.
Glad to be here. This is awesome.
This is CivicSciTV.